Culture begins to collapse when worship is misdirected. Oftentimes we don't talk about sin in this way, but ultimately that's what sin comes down to, isn't it? Sin is me choosing to worship something or someone other than God and His truth in my life. I decide, and oftentimes this doesn't happen in a conscious way, but I am deciding when I choose to sin to elevate whatever this is above God's truth in my life. And when we do that over and over and over again, it transforms us. But see, this is the power of transformation. When we choose to walk in the right path, when we choose to accept the truth as God revealed it, yes, in His Scripture, but fully in His Son, Jesus, then we begin to see in relationship to Him that worship isn't just singing wonderful songs, but worship is living a life that reflects my relationship with God. In verses 21 through 23, Paul says, yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. I think Paul is clear here that the problem isn't just ignoring God. It doesn't stop there. That leads to this exchange. When people stop worshiping the true God, we don't stop worship. They simply redirect it. And this is where I think we need to slow down a little bit and broaden our understanding of what Paul means here by idols. These aren't just statues on shelves from an ancient time or an ancient world. Paul describes what I believe is a spiritual reality when later in the Scripture, he says our struggle isn't against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces that are at work in the unseen realm. These are real powers at work that seek still today to redirect our attention, our worship, our focus, ultimately to distort how we see ourselves and how we see God in the world today. Hear this. Idolatry is not first about objects. It's about attention. Anything that draws our attention away from God can be an idol. What we give our time to shapes us. What we repeatedly focus on forms our passions. What holds our gaze begins to define our identity. Again, coming back to the algorithm, it's not a new invention. It's an old pattern wearing new technology, plain and simple. It simply feeds us more of whatever we give ourselves to in that moment. It rewards devotion. And over time, it trains within us desire. And that's exactly how misplaced worship works. When attention is pulled away from God, it doesn't land in neutral territory. It is shaped, it is steered, it is formed, it is reinforced by forces that do not have our freedom in mind. Culture begins to fall apart when worship is misdirected. Why? Because identity begins to fracture, to fall apart when our worship is misdirected. Friends, this isn't just an ancient idea of idol worship that Paul is talking about. This is modern attention to worship. And the danger is not that we look at the wrong things, but that over time we begin to believe the wrong things about God, about self, and about other people.